Welcome to Annette on Life, Liberty, and Happiness, a podcast where we talk about the Constitution, politics, history, and pretty much anything else I want to talk about. This podcast can be found on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeart Music. And if you want to see what we look like, go to YouTube and type in Annette Talks to find these episodes there. And also, I'm starting something new today with this episode. And so a few episodes may come up without this on it because I've pre-recorded them. But from here on out, I'm going to be doing a Constitution minute. I'm going to try and time myself to make sure I don't go over a minute. But I would like to, every episode from now on, share something about the Constitution, whether it's an interesting fact or just an explanation of what it's about with every episode. So tonight, I'm going to mention a few facts about the Constitution. The U.S. Constitution has 4,400 words. It is the oldest and shortest written constitution of any major government in the world. Of the spelling errors in the Constitution, Pennsylvania, with only one N, above the signer's name is probably the most glaring. Thomas Jefferson did not sign the Constitution. He was in France during the convention, where he served as the U.S. minister, and John Adams was serving as the U.S. minister to Great Britain during the Constitutional Convention and did not attend either, which I think is sad that we have two of our greatest contributors that didn't sign. And Thomas Jefferson is actually, well, they're both two of my favorites. I relate more to John Adams, but anyway, that's for another episode. So that's been our Constitution Minute. And now for our topic. We are right now in the month of June, and this podcast will be posted pretty close to the end of June. And this is Pride Month. And so all month long, I've been thinking about doing an episode that relates to the Pride Month. And it hasn't been one of my favorite topics because there's like so many landmines in it. But I kept feeling nudged. So I decided to take on the topic. And as most of you know, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and we believe that marriage is between a man and a woman. And so obviously marriage between a woman and a woman or a man and a man is not recognized within the church as far as, being able to be a member of the church in full standing and attending the temple and that sort of thing. So as you can see, it's a difficult thing when you have someone who in the church, we don't refer to people usually as gay. We refer to them as having same-sex attraction. And I think that's because we want to separate the identity, instead of identifying as something and saying, I am this thing, instead saying, I have this attraction. And so I think it makes it less connected to your identity as a person. And you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I have with me today, Tracy, Durfee, and Cameron Briggs. Hi, Tracy and Cameron.
Hi.
Hi. And I reached out because there was a discussion on a Facebook group about what members of the church who have same-sex attraction want from the church. And I thought it was a fabulous discussion. And so I just jumped in there and I said, hey, if anybody would like to be on my podcast that has same-sex attraction and is open about it, I would love to hear from you. And so both Tracy and Cameron reached out. And so we are going to have an honest and open, respectful discussion. And hopefully I will learn more what it's like from your viewpoint, and the listeners, both that have same-sex attraction and don't have same-sex attraction, will pick up some new knowledge, some new insight into this issue. And so I have a list of questions because I reached out to listeners and they gave me some ideas, and then I had some ideas of my own. But and I went over these questions before we were recording because I wanted Cameron and Tracy to not feel like I was, surprise, I have this question for you, because that's not the way I feel. But the episode is meant for people with same-sex attraction who are determined to live the gospel and live the law of chastity, which means not acting on that attraction. And so do both of you agree that that's kind of where you're at? Yeah. And okay, I was gonna say nodding, they won't hear it on the podcast.
Get it.
Yeah, that's why you both agreed to be on. So,
right.
All right. Well, the first question I had, and I thought this was an interesting one because nobody really knows what causes same-sex attraction. There's all sorts of ideas. Some people think it's a DNA thing, or there's something, a chemical thing. One of my theories has been that there was some kind of family dynamic that contributed to it. And who knows, it could be multiple causes. We're probably not going to know in this life, is my guess. But just out of curiosity, I wanted to know what your family dynamics growing up were. Let's start with Tracy.
Sure. I grew up in Utah and grew up with a family. Mom and dad married in the temple, but we're not active. And so we went to church sporadically. But as I became a teenager, other friends kind of fellowshipped us, and we went to seminary, graduated from seminary. I have a sister a year younger. And so we were pretty active as teenagers, and it was pretty normal that way.
Did you have a good relationship with your mother?
Yes.
So she was a nurturing mom?
She was very nurturing.
Okay, so that theory that I have for you is out the window. So already you can say, okay, one out. So there was no abuse growing up in your family?
A little bit of domestic violence in the family.
Between your mom and dad?
Yeah, but nothing major that would cause that you could say, that's it,
Okay.
The cause of it.
All right, thank you. And Cameron, what about you?
Both my parents very active, born in the covenant. I have an older brother and sister. They're 12 and 14 years older than me. And so I'm just kind of on the tail end. I kind of grew up by myself in a way. I mean, not with any siblings close around. And very small town. So we have 175 people, give or take on the year. And so, I mean, I definitely had kind of a lot of alone and playtime kind of thing. I mean, I didn't have a lot of other people to relate to and stuff. As far as church dynamic, I mean, very active in the church, always went to all the meetings and activities and small community. I mean, we're a very close-knit people here. No history of abuse that I'm aware of. I'm very big into family history and everything, and I have no knowledge. Nobody's at least come out with anything. So
what about your relationship with your dad?
So me and my dad, I mean, there's a lot of respect, everything. Our personalities are very different. Sometimes we clash on things, but I'm like a spitting image of my mom. So like we act alike, we think alike. I mean, we're basically the same person.
Awesome. You know what? I will revisit that question later, because I'm curious to know how your families have responded to your same-sex attraction, because obviously that's a big issue in the church. We hear a lot about, especially more historically, parents sort of rejecting a child that comes out and says, I'm gay. Then it's like, oh, okay, either I'm going to take you to a therapy and try and fix that, or if that's not even legal in most states anymore, I don't think. That's a whole nother episode right there. But, or I don't want anything to do with you kind of thing. And so I know that can be a very difficult dynamic as well when you're growing up in the church, and it's obviously you have an attraction that if you act on it, you put you outside of the church basically. And so that's got to be a difficult thing. But I want to keep going with my line of questions and then hopefully circle back to that. Oh, I hate that expression now. I used to like that expression before Jen Psaki, as Glenn Beck calls her.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I never really used that expression until she started using it and everyone started mocking it. And now it's like, I can't get rid of it. Anyway, we'll come back. We will revisit that question.
Okay.
All right. So when did you become aware that you were attracted to the same sex? Let's start with Cameron on this one.
As far as like identifying it, it's kind of ambiguous. My pornography addiction started when I was 11 years old. Very hard into it right off the gate and stuff, but I don't think I full on realized that there was anything different, or different's a wrong word, but anything abnormal from what other people might be experiencing until probably junior high or so. And then it was like, oh, So people aren't looking at the same kind that I am. So I don't know. That's when I first kind of became self-aware. Again, I was like kind of this lone child and was like, oh. But yeah, I would say probably junior high-ish.
Were you open about it then, or was it
Oh,
something?
no, I'm still not open about it.
You know what? That's a question that I didn't even add, but obviously it's a really good one. Is that when did you come out? I don't even know if that's an expression that you guys let me know, because I'm using expressions that I hear in the world, right? And I don't know how that compares to someone who's been trying to stay the straight and narrow, or in Tracy's case, as we'll find out later, is back on the straight and narrow. And so the way you identify is probably different than the way people out in the world fully embracing the lifestyle and identify. I'm just guessing.
Yeah.
Because I think if it were me and I was same-sex attracted, and that was the only difference between me as I am now and me as I would be same-sex attracted, I would probably relate a lot differently than other out in the world LGBTQ folks do, because it's just different. The goals are completely different. The goal is staying in the church. The goal is living the law of chastity. The goal is living the gospel. And so I don't even know if I would say I'm coming out and make a deal about it, or if I would just share with my close friends and family member, hey, I'm attracted to the same sex. So I don't know if you guys had a coming out moment. Let's just go there right now. How did this unfold for you both? And when did you come out, or how did that work for you? Let's go with Tracy on that.
Okay, so when I went to college, I became friends with a friend of a friend, and we just became best friends. And we were both LDS. We went to church together.
And this is a woman you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
And as our friendship grew, she'd go on dates with guys, and it was no big deal. But then about 3 months later, we were very close, and our relationship developed very slowly, but that we were both each other's first girlfriend. And so it was, I was probably 19 when that happened. And as soon as it happened, we were like, well, we're going to repent. We're never going to do that again. And of course it didn't happen that way. So
you shared, obviously she knew, but who did you share with? Family members at that point, or?
I didn't share for a little bit. It wasn't long though, because they could figure it out.
Yeah.
And my family was not okay. They wanted me to go into therapy. And eventually I had to just break off from my family, which was really hard because I was going to school. I was on the hottest rodeo team in the nation at Utah State.
Wow.
They threatened to, take away my horses and stuff like that. And it finally came down to I had to choose. And so I had to walk away from a lot of things. And so I did. Then as the years went on, they became a little bit more accepting. But then again, when I started to I have a daughter, and I had her through in vitro fertilization. And again, that was pretty freaky for them because she didn't have a father. I chose her father off of a menu. I got to choose hair color, eye color, and
wow,
did that in Portland. And
was this at Denny's or?
it was in Portland. It was yeah. And so again, then there was another level of, my family was just pretty upset. They used to tell gay jokes in front of me. They were pretty, nasty with me. Yeah. And so I stayed away from them for many years.
Oh, that's understandable.
Yeah.
Let's go back with you, because I wanted to find out, when did you first realize that you were attracted to women? And I wanted to go back and ask Cameron too, whether he was ever attracted to women, because it seems to me, just from everything I've read, that it's not always black and white, that there's a lot more ambiguity than you would think to people's preferences. And so I'm just kind of curious about that. So Tracy, when did you first realize you were attracted to women, and have you ever been attracted to men at all?
So I first realized I was attracted to just certain people, not particularly women. Friends in high school, mostly friends that lived in other towns, because I did rodeo a lot. So people that lived, 500 miles away. So it wasn't like I, acted on anything. And I was attracted to guys, but I was pretty introverted in high school, pretty much the backwards kiddo. I was really into sports, stuff like that. And so I don't know, I was just not the cool kid.
So you were attracted to people, but not necessarily just women. It was just specific people.
Right.
Did you ever date any men?
I did not. I did go on one date, and it was probably in the mid 80s. So this was probably 5 years or so after I'd been out a little bit. And it was a gay guy. So we're at a rodeo, and I remember a grasshopper lit on him, and he just screamed like a girl and flicked it off. And I'm like, oh, and I figured out who he was, and I'm like, nope.
Yeah, you were at cross purposes there. That's funny.
It was
All
funny.
right. Thank you. All right. So Cameron, are you attracted to women, or have you ever been attracted to women, or just to men?
I think that's one of the hardest questions of our day, right? Am I attracted to women sexually? No, like not at all. Could I ever go there? Yeah, but as far as there being the actual attraction, the craving, that kind of a thing, no. But on the flip side, I don't know. Like I've been married, but
To a woman.
yeah, to a woman, yes.
Right.
I've never dated a man. I've never acted out on any of the feelings and anything, but I've always wanted to date women. I was kind of like Tracy, kind of the backwards person back in high school. In the small town, everybody did football and basketball, etc. And to avoid locker room issues and scenes, I went to drama and band and did all of those kind of extracurricular things. I was always labeled the gay one, but I didn't really even know what that meant. We didn't have anybody else that was gay that I knew of. Like, oh, you're the gay one. Okay, whatever that means. But yeah, yeah.
How old are you, Cameron?
I am 33, going on 34.
All right. And so you never acted on your attraction?
Mm-mm. I mean, a couple close calls in the mission, but nothing.
So why have you never acted on it?
For the gospel. I mean, that's the only thing that really kept it. I always told myself too, I'm like, I'm so glad that I was blessed to be chunky and not good looking, or else I probably would have acted on it. But yeah, I just never have, because of testimony, of knowing what my goals are.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'm really impressed with your honesty and your openness. And I'm trying to do this in the best way that I can, because I don't ever want to feel judgmental or feel like I'm sloughing off any strong feelings, because I cannot imagine what it's like to be attracted to the same sex and know that that's something I'm never going to be able to fulfill and still live the gospel fully. But on the other hand, I am 52 and I'm divorced. I've been divorced for 6 years. I didn't get married until I was 38. So I have lived the law of chastity. So there was no sex before marriage, and there's been no sex since marriage. And so I know that it is possible to have those feelings and not act on them. However, I can go and kiss a guy and not feel, like I'm committing a sin. And so that's where there's a big difference, is that for someone like you, Cameron, you know that if you ever did decide to embrace that lifestyle, that you would be outside of the covenant and you would be living outside of Heavenly Father's plan for you. And so to me, that's got to be the most difficult part about your attraction, is knowing that you're never going to have that fulfilling, romantic, physical relationship. So how do you plan on handling that going forward? And is that something where you're committed to it? You're just committed to that you're going to be celibate basically for the rest of your life? Or what is your thinking?
It changes hour by hour. No, I'm fully committed in the gospel. I'm never going to act on it. I'm never going to put myself in positions where it would be possible or anything like that. It's just a non-starter for me. I would just never go there. But like, let me be clear, like I haven't acted out with another person, but I mean, obviously there was pornography and those things, so in a sense, yes, I have acted on it,
Right.
but I channeled that when I was younger in unhealthy ways. And now I've learned and really locked that down. And so, yes, going forward, like I plan to get married again. I plan to fully have a family. And
So how are you going to do that? This is what everyone's thinking, I guarantee you. How are you going to do that if you're not physically attracted to women? And without stepping on any toes, did your wife know that you felt this way before you married her? Because I know it was a short marriage, it was 1.5 years, right?
Yeah.
So did she know that you had this attraction when you got married?
Yes. Going in, I, felt it completely honest, just laid out on the table. And yeah, we both agreed that, that was fine. We're going to go with it. And it was one of the factors. I would say it's probably a lesser factor of the actual separation, but yeah, she fully knew. It was hard when we really were both feeling that we wanted to have children. We wanted to grow. We wanted to do this family thing. And but yeah, as far as not being attracted to women, I don't see that as a hindrance to actually performing the act and having children. Like, I say this tongue in cheek, like sometimes you don't want to eat your broccoli, but you just do it kind of thing.
But that would be really hard for the woman knowing that you're just getting this over with, so to speak, so you could, do the mechanical act so that you can have children. As I often think cause I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. I've known some women who have married men that were open about their same-sex attraction when they got married. I think, and I don't know where those marriages have gone, because this has been years since I've talked to them, but I've read stories about couples where they've been married for several years. But it seems like the men in that case were more bisexual because they were attracted to the women as well. So they were enjoying themselves, let's put it this way, with their wives, but they still had to stop themselves from checking the guys out when they were out shopping or whatever. So at least though the woman knew that he was physically attracted to her when they were married. Because I often think that in marriage, I was married for 9 years. And so I often think, boy, I don't know how we could keep it together if there were at least, that was a pretty big part. It's like we knew we would have that closeness. So even when things were bad, there was that one thing that was decent. So in a marriage, I just think that would be awfully hard if you're not both really attracted. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, for sure. Because that's one of the hardest dilemmas. That's why I didn't get married for so long, was because I never could find somebody that had a big enough testimony in the gospel that I think could handle my issues of intimacy or even wanting that. I don't know. That's really hard to find these days. Especially with an older dating pool. It's not like you just pick them out of high school, because that's kind of stranger danger area. But finding an older woman that is solid enough in her testimony to know that this isn't, I'm not gay, but that I have these attractions and I'm just not going to be in that way romantically 100% kind of thing. If you've ever read like the love languages or whatever, like physical, I just don't need that. That's not one of the things that I need.
You know what? That reminds me then, did you read David Archuleta's little blurb that he put on Instagram? To me, what it was saying was, I'm not sure if I'm like men or women, but I'm not really interested in sex. That's kind of what I came away with. Is that what you came away with? And so do you think that is the case for you as well? Or is it, you definitely prefer men, and if you were out in the world, you would probably be acting on that desire?
I don't think that I would be acting on it. No, like I'm just not a physical, intimate kind of person. I mean, that's just not who I am at all. And so, but when it comes to like my previous addiction and, like, yeah, doing that, kind of having that sort of a release to go with those emotions and feelings. But overcoming that with true and proper doctrine and knowledge and everything, I find that you just kind of move past that. And I would kind of put myself in that category. I'm just not a touchy-feely person. I don't need that kind of gratification.
Interesting. And so you've got your addiction to pornography controlled.
Yes.
Right. Thank you.
Took a long time, but yeah.
I think it's got to contribute to some of the issues. So Tracy, thank you for being so patient and waiting while we had that little dialogue.
No, I just want to say, I think this scripture, it's Romans 2:15, when we know who we are and what God expects of us, when this law is written in our hearts, that's how we're spiritually protected. Because a lot of people, my sister, she's always, I don't understand you. How can you just change like you did? Like 40 years you were one way and then poof, you're not, you know?
Yeah, tell us about that. So for 40 years, you were in several relationships with women. We know you never dated any men except for that one odd date.
Yeah.
And you had a child with one of the women you were with through in vitro fertilization.
Right.
And then, so that was for 40 years that you did that. So what happened? What changed?
So in 2017, probably the big change that happened for me is I did a bucket list thing. I was like, I wanted to read the Bible cover to cover. And I did that every single day for 365 days. We read the 3 verses, and then by the end of the year, you could get through the Bible. And just a lot of little whisperings started to happen. And it was a culmination of many, many whisperings. And so
were you in a relationship at that time?
No, I was not.
Oh, okay.
So having a kiddo, you're in a lot of different worlds like that you don't fit in. You don't really fit in the gay lesbian world because you have this kiddo. There's so many biases that come at you. When you have a kiddo, you don't really fit in the parent groups because you don't fit the model. I was active in another church, in the Presbyterian church. Didn't really fit there because, just so many things. So anyway, 2017, I'm reading the Bible. I was corresponding with my nephew who was on a mission, and that really got me going too. He got married right off his mission, and so went to his wedding at the Manti Temple. Oh, I knew then what I had to do, but it was so hard because when my partner was killed in 1998.
Oh my goodness.
And so lost my train of thought.
Were you in relationships after you lost her?
A few, nothing. They were always so jealous of my daughter. But when I said at the Manti Temple, just the spirit was so strong. I knew I had to go back, but it was just the pride of, you were so wrong. Because when my partner was killed, that's where I got derailed. My auntie was like, now you can come back to the church. Ooh, and that just made me mad. And I dug out further. But anyway, so at the Manti Temple, I knew then what I needed to do. And it was very hard because I had to admit how wrong I was. I had had my name removed from the church. I was in a different religion. I was an elder in that church. And it was really hard for me to have my mom, I told you so, all that kind of stuff. And
that's the same way for the rest of us that aren't same-sex attracted as well.
So after that, I dared go back to church. It was December, the first Sunday in December in 2017. Met the missionaries there, and they immediately started coming to my house, just helping me. And I knew right as soon as I was done with church that I needed to come back. And so started working towards I had to get permission from the First Presidency to be rebaptized. And then in May of 2018, I was rebaptized, and I did everything I was supposed to do very faithfully. I got my patriarchal blessing after I was baptized. And I was baptized in May, and then in November went back to the temple in Manti to take out my endowment. And it's not hard at all. Everybody's like, I don't get it. How can you do this? And I'm like, it's super easy when I do every single thing. I have to keep every single commandment. I have to pray, study, removing Babylon from my life as far as movies, books, trying to raise myself up to a terrestrial level of living, and it works. And I don't know how I do it. I do sometimes have some weird dreams, but because I've been in doubt, I know how to get rid of Satan, and it happens maybe every 3 or 4 months, and I just wake up in the middle of the night and cast him out, and on I go. And I'm like, where did that come from? Because it just comes out of the blue, but I do feel attacked once in a while.
So do you feel, are you still attracted to women, or is it just sort of a non-issue at this point?
It's so strange. My sister's like, I don't understand you, because I'm not. And I have to, like, what happened? It's the gospel. I just know the commandments. Like growing up, I always thought, okay, in the 70s, that's when Blacks could have the priesthood. And I was like, social pressure, it's going to come. I was really active in the gay movement in the 80s, 90s. And I thought, okay, social pressure, they're going to change it. They're eventually going to change it. And then once I came back to the church and realized, the proclamation of the family and my patriarchal blessing, which says, I will use my life experience to help others. I mean, there's just all these things that I know that the doctrine says marriage between a man and a woman is the fundamental goal to the Lord's plan for eternal happiness, a family. That's, you need to create posterity. That's just the way that works. And now I know it's never going to change. And so now I get nervous because I can see how this has all crept into our culture. And I'm so anti of what is going on. It's people that don't know me. They just like, who are you?
So that, as long as we're there, I'm going to go ahead and skip up to a question that I was going to ask you later, and then I'll come back to some of the other ones. But so obviously we are smack dab in the middle of Pride Month. Well, we're almost done with Pride Month. But although I think they have it again in October.
They're trying to get it year round.
Yes, it seems like it. But this is the first time, and this is coming out of COVID. I have a theory on this, but this is the first time where I've seen it so prevalent. I mean, even like when I logged into Zoom to start the meeting, they had their little rainbow over their Zoom logo, right? So it's huge, it's everywhere. And I hear that in Utah, I've read this on Facebook, that in Utah, there are pride flags all over the place in people's front yards, like from members and things like that, which is interesting because you don't see that here. I think I could probably count on one or two fingers the amount of pride flags I've seen in Colorado. And so obviously a lot of church members have decided to get on that bandwagon. So what do you guys both think about Pride Month? And you kind of answered this already, but do you identify with the LGBTQ community? And Cameron, let's go with you first. What's your take on Pride Month?
Yeah, I do not identify with the LGBT community at all. Kind of we've talked about, and you were saying, I don't identify as gay. I just have an attraction, and it's just one of the things that I deal with, but it's not who I am. There's a huge difference there. And so when we have all of this pride and everything, I mean, say it for what it's worth, but beware of pride, like Benson said. I mean, there's many different forms of pride, but they all are pride, and they all are enmity towards God. And so when we focus on, and I mean, yes, we need to have a better mindset in the church and be more accepting of people so that we can get people the help that they need, so that we're not suiciding, so that we're not having these social issues. But at the same time, we're going a little too far to it, in my perspective, in celebrating it and endorsing it and saying that it's okay to have relations and to just live your life. The church will eventually come around, kind of thing. I think that's too prevalent of an attitude, and we're treading on dangerous ground. And we can see it in our nation. It's bringing on covenantal curses upon everyone, because everyone's affected by it nowadays. I mean, whether it's in your own family, whether it's in your community, whether your congregation or church, I mean, we're all being affected by all of the unrighteousness that's happening in the world at large today. It's been prophesied, so I mean, we're here now, and we have to deal with it. And I think that is tiptoeing on a damaging line of celebrating it.
Thank you. You know, that you just about took the words out of my mouth, because that's pretty much the way I feel about it. And all month long, when I've seen so many members jumping on the bandwagon, putting rainbows on their Facebook pages and everything. And I'm of two minds of it. I think, yes, we don't want to see the suiciding, and we don't want people feeling like outcasts, and we don't want people feeling not welcome to church, and we don't want people feeling bad about themselves, any of that. And so I'm cool with accepting and embracing people for who they are. But when we go to celebrating being gay, or calling yourself gay, or living that lifestyle and celebrating it, instead of just being accepting of people, it feels to me like we've gone too far. Like the pendulum started over here where people weren't accepted and it was bad, people were cast out, to we should have stopped at acceptance, but we just kept swinging right over here to celebration. And so I feel like part of the reason why it's happening right now is because we're coming out of COVID, where everybody was virtue signaling with masks.
Yeah.
And so they're like, oh, well, that's over. So what are we going to virtue signal about? And so, oh, rainbows. Yes. I can virtue signal with rainbows, you know, and so that's what I feel. But also, and I want to get your take on this, I would talk to some other friends of mine within the church that have family members that have talked about, they think now that they might be bi, or they're experimenting or whatever. I feel like this over the top celebration of, I mean, it's almost cool, right? It's cool to be gay now.
Oh yeah.
And
people are sending out invitations for coming out parties like it's a marriage or something. I'm
yes, like, it's become cool, or it's hip, right? I feel like that's contributing to people who might not otherwise have decided to experiment or start thinking along those lines to do that. Mm-hmm. So what did you guys think? I'm right on that, or is that crazy?
I do. And have you ever looked at, put Pride Month together, put those two words together, and in the middle, you can spell demon. All right.
Never thought about that.
Yeah. Anyway, it's, I identify not as any of those acronyms. I'm a child of God, and I've left that part of me behind. I seek a eternal companion. I want to be sealed in the temple. I need my daughter sealed to me. She's hanging out there.
And she converted with you.
Oh yes. I raised her to be so anti-Mormon, you guys. It's a miracle she converted. It took me.
Kids don't always listen to us, huh?
It took me 11 missionaries and a lot of prayer. I mean, I have the recipe how to do it. But yes, she's been baptized. She was baptized about 8 months after I was, and she's amazing. I can tell she is a chosen one. I'm like, honey, do you realize you signed up to do this with me up in the pre-existence? And we're going to both maybe make it out of it. But she's amazing. She's had her endowments taken out, as many blessings as we can get in, you know, the covenants and stuff we keep. Surprisingly, I want to tell you guys this. The last two guys she's dated, both returned missionaries, though, have, at least I think I have this gaydar in me. I can see in them the tendencies. And that worries me, because I'm seeing more and more gay everywhere. It's the cool thing, and it's extremely troubling for me. I kind of think we're headed toward a transgendered male and a transgendered female marrying and demanding to be in the temple because they're male and female.
Nothing will surprise me.
Nothing will surprise me either, but we just have to turn to the scriptures, and you can see where, nope, can't do that. Like even with the acronyms, when the Nephites were truly righteous, they avoided divisive nicknames. They were all one, children of Christ. heirs to the kingdom of God. And that's from 4th Nephi 1:15 and 17. I rely so heavily on the scriptures to keep Tracy on the path. I do want an eternal marriage. And my bishop, he's like, that might happen in the next part. So, I'm doing this life and trying my very best.
You mean like the next life? Tracy, so that I'm sure everybody's wondering, then are you attracted to men at this point, or have there been one or two that?
I sometimes think about, okay, I'm just going to have this guy who's lost his wife and it'll be just a marriage for, the ceiling blessings and stuff like that. Maybe. I think I read something once where there will be in the last days men who will need to marry women just for the covenants that they can partake of. I wish I could remember where, but I just have my trust in God that there's a plan for me. I talked to you a little bit about this. I do believe there's a bit of vaccine injury in this for people, and I wish I was more scientific to go into that, but I think there's a lot more to this than we know on this side of the veil, and we'll find out. And so I just am trusting the Lord and trying to stay faithful to the plan.
So you both see yourselves sealed to opposite sex companions for eternity?
I do now. Prior, I did not. And I think that is a huge issue because, no two people have the same story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some that I've talked to, and I experienced this earlier on when I didn't have a full knowledge of things, was like, okay, so we talk about the eternities. We're going to become gods. We're going to people all these worlds. We're going to do all this kind of stuff. And it's like, I don't want that. If that's the thing, and I'm just going to be popping out babies left and right for the rest of eternity, that's not a good plan. I didn't sign up for that kind of thing. Like, I don't have a place at the Lord's table if that's what the whole end game is. And so that was part where I really had a hard time coming to grips with the plan of salvation, etc. And then I kind of like Tracy said, staying rooted in the scriptures is the saving grace. Like, that's what can bring you out of these things, because Satan is so tricky to get you to believe certain little lies or precepts of men or different traditions. We as church members, and I say this like as a blanket statement for all, we don't understand the plan of salvation like we should. If we get into the scriptures really, there's a lot more to the plan of salvation. That chart that missionaries always do, here's pre-mortal, here's mortal, here's the 3 degrees of glory. Mm-hmm. We have misconceptions all over that map. That map is wrong. Like, we need to start focusing and branching into what the scriptures actually say about it. And when you do so, you realize what the plan is and what your role in it is. Like, this is awesome. I mean, there's so much more to the gospel than we sometimes reduce down to a primary level learning kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just last week, as we were studying the Doctrine and Covenants, I picked out Doctrine and Covenants 64:2. I would that ye should overcome the world, wherefore I will have compassion upon you. He's watching us and helping protect us. I see it pop up all the time. And
so do you both feel like when you're living the gospel and you're doing your best to obey the commandments and repent like we all have to, and you're living your life in line with what you know your Heavenly Father wants, do you feel like you are given assistance with this issue? Like it's some of the, I don't know how to put it, but are you given assistance with this issue?
Well, yeah, the church is giving us assistance right now. I'm on planning committees for the singles, because over half of the church is single right now, male and female. I think the First Presidency recognizes, oh my goodness, look how many people don't have eternal companions. And so we're having like this summer-wide devotional series, and we're going to meet as states in August. It'll be Alaska, Washington, Oregon, California, having this August meeting up in Portland. And I know that's happening all throughout the country. Everybody's trying to help people find their people. And I don't know, through my daughter, she's in the young singles ward. They're also doing workshops instead of institute classes where anybody can go to any topic of a meeting. They're just trying it out this summer. And so they meet via Zoom, and kids from all over the country come, and it's just a way for kids to meet more people.
So that's jumping ahead to my other question about how you believe.
Sorry.
That's okay. Because I read the questions to you ahead of time, you're probably thinking I was asking you how you feel the church is, if the church can do any more, how you feel about the way they handle people with same-sex attraction. But what I was asking, what I want to know is whether you feel like you have assistance from Heavenly Father with dealing with your attraction when you're living your life more in line with the gospel, as opposed to being outside of the gospel and just, doing your own thing.
Yeah, I think for me, being older, I just don't have a lot of those urges. So it's probably easier for me as an older person than a younger person.
I
But
didn't want to ask that, but the thought
that's okay.
crossed my mind.
No, it's fine. I've been fine for a long time. As my daughter grew up and, went to college, I was okay being alone, didn't seek out anything. I'm kind of over it, And it's just like, wait, what happened? How did I get so derailed, And I got super derailed. I feel very blessed that I've made it back. Just the pride alone, admitting you're wrong.
Oh yeah,
so many levels.
That's hard for all of us. It just is.
Well, my mom still will say, ha ha, I knew you were, and it's been 3 years, like, okay, Mom, get a new line.
Right, really. So I don't want to step on any toes or anything, but did your daughter ever feel like she might be same-sex attracted, or was that never an issue for her?
She did scare me in 5th grade. We were at outdoor school. I'm a school teacher, so I was at outdoor school with one of my students with autism, and she had the biggest crush on the camp counselor. And boy, I woke up fast, and
so that wasn't okay with you?
No, it was not. I didn't want any part of my life to influence her. You dream of your kiddo just having a normal, happy life, because it is not an easy life being gay. It is very hard. You're discriminated by your family, so many levels. And then even when you change and have a baby and are sort of conforming to society, you're still an outcast. So it's just hard. Like, why would I ever want that kind of a hard life for my kiddo?
So
never.
That didn't go anywhere.
No, in middle school, she wanted to dye her hair and do all weird things. I wouldn't let her. So instead I let her take a little lock of it, and we had a lady braid in some colored thread in it. And that was, she had really long hair, and it was just in the back, and only she could see it.
So she's dated men and seems to only be attracted to men.
She's very heterosexual.
Okay. Just curious. All right.
Yeah.
So Cameron, what about you? As far as, do you think living the gospel helps you to deal with your same-sex attraction?
Yes, for sure. So I'm going to try to make this story as short as possible, but because it kind of defines my whole life and it's kind of interwoven. But when I was on the mission, I had a experience where this recent convert came to us and said that her brother was possessed and we needed to come and perform an exorcism. She was very heavily Catholic and stuff. Anyway, and I was like, I don't know. It threw me for a loop. I didn't even know how to even respond to it. And I was a senior companion at the time. And so I called my mission president, and he said, just, a priesthood blessing, try to call the bishop or stake president there locally and go help you. Anyway, we went, obviously possessed of evil spirits. I mean, this was a very strong demonic force. And we cast out, like with temple, we learn all of that, and priesthood blessing, everything. Anyway, it's kind of hard to describe, explain, or whatever, but whatever it was backfired, and it affected me very greatly. I had a kind of a personal experience with Satan, one of his minions, who knows what, but it really tore me up, because face to face, he just told me that you're not going to make it. You are perdition. Look at the covenants you made. Look at your trajectory. this is the end of the road for you, kind of thing. Like the fact that I am talking to you right now, it means that you're done for. There's no hope of salvation or exaltation, kind of thing. And so it took me a long time to recover from that, because I still wasn't able to be honest with my mission president. I didn't want to get sent home because I was gay. I didn't want to do anything. So I just kind of wrote out my mission. You can ask my parents, any of my family, like, I don't really talk about my mission. It's just kind of like, yeah, it was great. There was lots of little one-off experiences that were great. But that last 6 months or so, like, I just kind of had to write it out, because I literally thought that I was going to be cast off forever. And so it really traumatized me, but I still wasn't able to like come out, as we say, kind of thing. And so flash forward many years, many obstacles and challenges and things, conversions, being born again. But it wasn't until I was called to be a stake family history consultant and started really doing family history work very intensely and trying to learn things. And one of the main things with the new Discover, Gather, Connect program was discovering your ancestors who've already had their temple work done, you know, connecting with those 4th-generation ancestors. And I had this amazing experience with my grandpa Leo, and I didn't know him. He had died before I was born, or maybe right after, I don't know. Anyway, I didn't know him. And then, so there's very little written about him, but all the family knows him really well. But there's one little statement that he wrote, and he talks about an experience similar to mine on the mission, and that he dealt with adversarial forces from the other side face to face like that. And I mean, clear as day, he came to me and he's like, do you remember that angel that helped you in the mission? And I, yeah. And he's like, that was me. I was helping you. I've dealt with those things. I know how to do it. And I helped you cast him out at that point. And so moving forward now with family history work, with true and proper knowledge of the gospel and stuff, I've got myself way in tune to hearing him, but more important, well, not more importantly, sorry, scratch that. Not more importantly than hearing Christ, but being able to differentiate between Christ's voice and one of our ancestors' voice or one of our ministering angels' voices is crucial. And so now, because I'm not like Tracy at all, I haven't gotten over my my sexual whims and stuff. Like, you know, if a hot guy walks past me, like my brain's just frazzled. But Leo, my grandpa, is always there. As long as I'm keeping my covenants, as long as I'm true and faithful and keeping my heart and hands pure and clean, it doesn't matter. If I'm surrounded by temptations or whatever, and I'm just derailed, family connections, that sealing power, the ministering angels from the other side are enlisted to help us cast those things out, because sometimes we just, in our day and age, we don't like to recognize evil or unclean spirits or anything like that. We're just like, ooh, that's taboo. But once you have true and proper framework of the gospel and do family history, this is why family history work is so important, to enlist and recognize our ancestors that are helping us. Because when we're working in tandem, that synergistic principle multiplies in eternal realms. And it's just amazing the amount of help. Like just last night, like I had like a dream that was wild and stuff. And it was just like, okay, you can call on your ancestors by name. Okay, Heavenly Father, please send me Leo, and we're going to cast this out. We're just going to get over this and move on, kind of thing. And it works like that. Because there's priesthood working on both sides of the veils, and we can do this as long as we're keeping our covenants. We're entitled to the Lord's help, kind of thing. Sorry, that was a long old story, and welcome.
That was very awesome. And without going into detail, I had a similar experience with dark spirits, I guess you could say. And so I have had some firsthand knowledge, and I'm not the only one. I'm a little jealous of you having your did you say grandpa or uncle?
Yeah.
Leo. And also you're not the first one that's come onto my podcast to talk about angels. I haven't posted it yet, but I have another one where she comes on. And I've had a lot of people talk to me about angels lately, and there's a part of me that's like, oh, come on. But then there's another part of me that says, dude, they tell us about angels in the gospel all the time. I know it's a thing.
It is.
And I've had an experience where, I'll tell you this one experience since we're off on this little tangent. When I was in my 20s, and I remember I was going through a difficult time. I don't remember what the difficult time was about or why I was having it, but I had some roommates, and I had a friend come over and give me a priesthood blessing. And then we all went to bed, and I had my sister and my cousin shared a room with me. And it wasn't until years later that I found out that my cousin had woken up in the middle of the night and seen a man standing over my bed. And then she just turned over and went right back to sleep. It's like, okay, so obviously that wasn't a person, or else she would have been like, freaked out, waking up. Obviously I had a guardian angel that night watching over me because I was going through something difficult. And so I know that they are out there. I don't know if he's come back again or if that was a one-off or what, but I know both of those things happen. I know that we battle demons. Hopefully not often. There's only one time in my life a few times, but I would like to have a more personal relationship with one of my angels like you do, because how powerful is that to be able to call on the specific angel and say, can you help me with that? Because heaven knows, literally heaven knows that we all need that. And
well, if you ever want some help with it, I'm a family history consultant still. We do this all the time, helping people connect with their ancestors in order to enlist their help and recognize their help when it does come and stuff. I've got a pretty good formula down to help recognize that stuff out.
My grandma and grandpa Durfee helped me all the time. In fact, when I went and had my endowment, I had 17 family members with me. And it was so cool because we could feel, my auntie was walking ahead of me in the celestial room, and we could feel grandma right there by us. She was there, and she's happy because a lot of her kids were inactive, but because of my endowment, a lot of people reactivated their temple recommends. And she said,
like if Tracy can do it.
Do you know? Well, I know they all look up to me and they're like, what's Tracy going to do next to get the family going? But my whole family was there. My mom, my dad, my brother, my sister, a lot of my nieces, nephews, aunts and uncles. And I didn't realize it till later because it was just all about me at that point. But I was just like, wow, it's amazing.
That is awesome.
Can I hijack another couple minutes?
Do.
So, this is my own opinion. I obviously know that everybody has wildly different things on this, but in my experience with my own and with a few people that I've helped, friends or locally, whatever, I can almost pinpoint it down to every person that same-sex attraction deals with unclean spirits. Like it, I hate to blanket statement it out for everyone because some people do not agree with me on this, and that's fine. But if you'll take the time to recognize true doctrine, study the scriptures, there's 150 some odd accounts of casting out and unclean spirits kind of thing. But if you'll take the time to recognize it in your life, get a proper priesthood blessing that accesses the powers of heaven in order to truly cast out, you'll recognize that it's a true principle. And those that I have helped and helped talk through things, we found that as soon as you have the power and know how to cast out on a regular basis, anytime that you're feeling a temptation, it starts alleviating things very quickly, and you're able to learn more quickly and get help from ministering angels, etc. But again, my opinion, take it for what it's worth.
And also get a blessing on your house.
Yes.
I that's one of the very first things I did was getting a blessing on my home.
Well, and I don't want to oversimplify it, but it seems to me like same-sex attraction is very similar to other issues that we have in our lives in the way that we handle it and in the way we strengthen ourselves to deal with those issues. And so it's just that it's more complicated in that what we talked about earlier is that you're probably never going to have that pull to the opposite sex that's going to allow it to be easy for you to enter into a heterosexual marriage and do what we know Heavenly Father wants us to do. And, that is to be sealed to an eternal companion. It's just that it complicates that part of your life greatly. But otherwise, it's just an issue like any other that if
Just
you,
our burden. Yep.
right, we all have them.
We do.
We all have issues. And I'm grateful that's not mine because that would be so hard for me. I don't know. Heavenly Father probably looked at me and said, you can't handle that. You're not strong enough to handle that.
I know. I always say, gosh, we signed up to do this and we told Heavenly Father we could do this. And by golly, I'm going to do it.
Well, I'm going to echo something that my sister says to me a lot, that she sees individuals like yourselves who have this attraction, but who are determined to stay on the covenant path. And she admires the heck out of you guys. She just does. And so I want to pass that on. That's Jane, my sister. She admires the heck out of you guys that are doing your best to stay on the covenant path, even when it would be so socially acceptable, especially right now, more than ever, to step away and just go try and live that lifestyle.
Yoo-hoo, yeah, exactly.
My friend, she had a friend, and when I first met him, I'm like, yeah, he seems gay, and he was a hairstylist, and he was a strong member, but he decided to go, as he put it, live la vida gay. That's what he called it. And so he went out. I thought that was cute that he put it that way, but he went out and he lived the lifestyle, and he wasn't happy with it, so he came back. And so, to me, it said that's not true happiness. It might feel like you're scratching an itch and you're doing what comes naturally to you. But if it's not in line with what Heavenly Father wants for you, it can't bring lasting happiness. And to me, that's the way I would feel if I was same-sex attracted. I could see where it would be like, well, that's, what I really want. But at the same time, I know what it feels like to not be on the covenant path and how awful I feel, no matter what else I'm doing in my life. So I can just imagine that going out and living that way, like I said, you're scratching an itch, but it's not happiness. It's not joy.
No, as I lived that lifestyle, I guess you could say, a lot of the people do a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol. And I was always the one who they would like to hang out with me because I would drive them to and from the bar and drive safely because I didn't drink, which was weird, kind of.
Do you think it's higher? Drug and alcohol use is higher in that community?
I do.
Okay.
And I think it's a way to numb the sadness, the pain.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in college, I couldn't believe how many people were addicted to cocaine. I remember going to some parties and I was stone sober and the Coke plate would go right by me. I'd just pass it on around. Like, oh, this is scary.
Yeah.
I feel really lucky. I've always followed the word of wisdom pretty much my whole life. I mean, I did try drinking just to see, but it was just taste nasty to me. But everybody would always laugh at me. Wow, you're still really a Mormon. You still keep the word of wisdom. You don't drink coffee, tea, alcohol. It's funny.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really grateful to both of you for being so open. And this went off in areas I never would have guessed, which is awesome. I love it. That's one of the most fun things about podcasting is that you just don't know where it's going to go. And sometimes it's a little scary, but it's still a lot of fun. So to wrap it up, I want to ask you both, what would you like members of the church or people outside of the church to know? Is there anything that you want to share? Cameron, you want to go first?
Yeah, for sure. So I don't want to go off on another tangent and stuff, but one of the things that as I've really come to study the scriptures really fully and deeply, right now we studied Abraham in my book club and we're going into Isaiah and really going through it. It's been eye-opening really to see how many prophets described this ladder to heaven and what it looks like to be on each level of the ladder. And as we kind of talk about in open forums, kind of thing with 144,000 in translation and some of those principles, Isaiah describes it most succinctly, I find, that all of our tests and trials are to propel us forward. There is a descent phase, meaning tests and trials, before we can ascend. If you're just going along straight, there's no way that it's not on an incline. It's just a straight thing. So unless you descend, you can't ascend. And so here's my working theory. Again, not everybody agrees with this, but We know that in the last days before the second coming, there's going to be a need for many faithful members of all dispensations to come together in order to fight in the last days, right? And a big part of that is the 144,000. But those 144,000, or even levels beneath them, they have to go through some of the most serious tests and trials that we've ever imagined. And so I don't think that there's any coincidence that the 144,000 category that's, Enoch's people and all of that, they're associated with the rainbow. And what does Satan always do? He always counterfeits truth.
Perverts it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think, this is my own personal opinion, that those sent to this age of the earth and a dispensation of the fullness of times have to go through this type of trial, because it's one of the most mind-bending psychological issues that I can even imagine experiencing. But this is the deepness of a level that can propel us forward to that. So I don't think that there's a coincidence that the flag is involved in this pride movement, and it's Satan's counterfeit for the real deal. And I think that all of our little flaming butterflies are ready to assume and ascend the ladder to heaven and become God's emissaries here on this earth. And it couldn't have been done with any other type of test or trial. That's my 2 cents, my working theory. Take it for what it's worth.
I really appreciate the descending before you can ascend metaphor. I like that, because then whenever I'm descending, and that happens a lot, I can say, okay, that means I'm going to be ascending pretty soon. Yes.
Exactly.
What about you, Tracy? Do you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, irregardless of any civil legislation that's enacted, the doctrine is going to be marriage between a man and a woman. That just is. And I know that, well, my blessing says so, that my trials are not going to be diminished or lessened. And that scares me, because I've already been through so many. But as I have had a few years to wrap my head around it, I know I'm strong enough to do this. And each day I get stronger and stronger as we kind of march into these tribulations. I can feel we're there. So,
well, I can only think that you're both stronger for having gone through what you have and
absolutely
to be where you are right now. I echo again, Jane. I admire the heck out of you guys for doing this. And I hope that we can call each other friends now, and that we can continue to chat. That's one of the fun things about podcasting, is I usually make friends with my guests. So
cool.
And I appreciate you both coming on and sharing
You're
your
welcome.
experiences and your viewpoints. And because I know it's not an easy topic, but I think it went all right, didn't it?
Yep.
Offend anybody? Well, I don't. I'll probably hear from some of my listeners, because I usually manage to offend someone, but that's all right. As long as I didn't offend you too.
Yeah.
So, great. Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining me. Thank you all for listening. Please feel free to reach out to me on AnnetteTalks.com, or email me at Annette@AnnetteTalks.com if you have comments or questions or ideas. And thank you for listening to Annette on Life, Liberty, and Happiness, where freedom lovers gather.